I didn't want last week to end. We were so charged up. We couldn't just talk about refugees and community. It went well beyond what she was talking about in her book. We couldn't just talk about this without doing something. And that felt really good. Today, wanted to focus on the chapter of living with purpose. She subtitles this, really, it's the shortest chapter in the book, vocation. And so that's what we'd like to talk about today a little bit.
Well, earlier we were sharing what some of the unusual jobs.
Everyone's got a good story, right? Remember your first job or something, that silly summer job during college or something like that. But she starts off, who hasn't read it yet? Henry David Thoreau, sounding as, I guess, zen as he ever did, saying, do not be too moral. You may cheat yourself out of too much life. Aim above morality. I mean, it's about as now as you can get. Aim above morality. Be not simply good, be good for something. And so that's, I mean, Thoreau just summed up what she took 10 pages to give us some anecdotes. But we all had jobs, we all have jobs. We're here for something. What is it? Well, we've got to pay our bills, we've got lives to live and things like that. But how to tie that into our spiritual life as well. And if you want to be really conscious about it, you can live with purpose and see how your everyday job really affects others and how you come across in more ways than just, punching the clock.
Well, and it also gives rise to the purpose of the church. It's our own purpose in our own lives, but WCC in the vision has defined some purpose for us, and that's a little more daunting, I think. If you read that document, there's a lot of ideas and a lot of directions that you can go.
It makes me wonder when you think about if you're in sales, do you have a sense of larger purpose other than making a profit for your company and yourself? I mean, is there a higher calling to someone doing a sales job?
Never thought about it.
It might be different depending on what you're selling.
Exactly.
Salespeople would say very much yes, and could speak to at length the light in the sales. I know this because I belong to other spiritual groups where salespeople have spoken up to talk about how their profession ties into the sacred for them. Part of it comes with knowing that you're doing something that you're passionate about, and you really want to make a connection with the rest of humanity through a gift that you have.
Yeah, I like that idea of passion because there's a book I read one time that said that our job, our call is following our bliss, following what brings us joy to be doing where it meets human need. And I love that definition because I think it's true. Calling is not something foreign to who you are.
I think following up on what JS said and what you said about sales, I think people in sales have a real tremendous gift in terms of interpersonal relationships. And I think that that's the thing that they probably give and also get, is that tremendous interpersonal relationship with many. That's why they're successful. But I think there's something beyond their success, that interaction.
That's for sure. Lois, Edith?
Yeah. First 4 years of my post, my graduation, I may not make this. The first 4 years out of college, I was at Marshall Fields. And obviously, though I was working up store decoration, via a detour and budget for a handbag and sales. And the combination of people that I met ran in those 4 years of, thank you. Those 4 years of everything from a sponsor budget for handbags, bringing in repairs, in other words, 2 years of complaints, surrounded by decorating first on the budget floor and then on the 8th floor by the tram house. I met every variety of need or complaint you could possibly imagine in the store. And especially when I was taking in damaged handbags and trying to calm a person down. Was indignant about this handbag not behaving itself. You met on the fringes of that all kinds of pleasure or catastrophe. And so anybody who's in sales doesn't know who they're going to meet when someone comes in, or in my case, for 2 years, with a complaint. And boy, in fact, I remember a married woman who carried her name with her, and obviously she didn't like it. I asked her, and she was very well dressed and a very sweet lady, and she had a handbag to repair. And I asked her name, and she whispered it, hospital. Hospital. Obviously, the sound of the name itself bothered her, and I could understand why. I wrote it down and she spelled it out and life went on. I got home that night and looked up in the phone directory. There was a small group. I probably think a family. And what's in the name, sometimes it can disturb your life very badly. It's just one example of what you can meet in sales that you can help or hinder.
Good point.
Passing comment, you never know what you administer to.
True.
Out at the North Shore Senior Center on Tuesday morning, they have a program for all people that's free for members. But beginning at 9 o'clock, they have an hour of conversation and coffee and sweet rolls. And I must say, of all the people that come there, the ones who are the most outgoing and accepting everybody around them, I mean outgoing, accepting, and welcoming each other, are those who have been in sales. Hands down.
You have to be. May I help you is the first thing you say. And that's your focus.
You have to, you're starting conversations constantly.
It's also focused on service, is it not?
Especially when you're shy, when you're raised Swedish shy. First phrase I learned from my family about Swedish was singing and ding. Don't say anything. Shut up.
Yeah.
I was, we had a conversation with friends of ours the other night. We were talking about, asked them about first-time jobs. I was thinking it was really important for teenage kids to have first-time jobs. I read that. And we were with our daughter-in-law's parents, and mother said she just lit up. And this is a very successful woman. She's a teacher, she's been principal of a school and so on and so forth. And she lit up and she said, my first job was the best job. I learned so much, and it was a job working in a grocery store. But she said that gave her so much confidence in herself that it really helped her forward. And I think that's really interesting to think about. She talked about that in the book, some job that you wouldn't think would be very satisfying, but that really gave her a real boost in going forward with their life.
I think there's a chasm between that period of time and today. Service today is terrible. And I don't know why.
Service,
I'm, sorry, sales clerks.
oh,
Anywhere I go, it seems like they're wrong, they don't know what they're doing, and particularly Walgreens prescriptions.
Oh,
And
that's a corporate problem, I think.
I don't,
You know what I
That's-
did
that's
with
my
that one
comment.
day? And have used it often. If someone was being rude or their service is just inappropriate in my mind, I'll say, are you okay? And they go, they're startled by it.
Well, that's good.
shocking,
Shocking,
yeah,
yeah.
nice work.
What you're
Yes.
telling them, that's not normal behavior.
Yeah, something must be wrong.
I like that review of
It's
that.
very good, very nice. But, you know, I think in terms of first jobs, I think there's a time in life for everything. And when you're a teenager, you really need a first job. And it doesn't matter what level it's at, because it's your first job. And those people who are probably gonna be successful in life are the ones who learn a lot in their first job. And you can probably learn a lot in any first job,
Right.
because it is your first job. Yeah, first of all, you have to be there on time. That's for some people, that's a challenge. So and then you learn a lot so that you can then ramp yourself up into more and more complicated.
Well, for John, want to speak to them about your first job?
I had a similar experience. A series of, when I was a kid, and I was living out in Iowa. My dad was the minister there, and when I was in high school, I got this job to work in a little newspaper, a weekly newspaper. And I learned a lot about, I've written a story about this, we'll see it one of these days if I ever die. And,
We get it done before you die.
You have to wait for that to read the story.
We have to wait till you die? Can you give it to us earlier?
you die earlier than I was planning?
No, don't die. No, I don't want you to die. I just want you to give me the story. I don't want you to die.
But in any case, once you start working in a newspaper, the deadline is very important, and it still is important to me. You know, if I have to go at 8 o'clock, I want to be ready at 7:45. Because I don't want to arrive at 8:05. It's more important to be there early than to be there late.
Have you met my
Job
daughter,
line.
She's exactly the same way.
That first job launched him, he was a printer's devil, launched him into his whole career.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think that.
My first job was, my dad set my twin brother and I up in the snow cone business. And the towns, the snow cones, we sold the ice, with the ice, crushed ice and the syrup. And a mom would help us make it, but we went to Memphis to some warehouse and bought this commercial snow cone maker, and we had to pay him back, we had to keep books, we had to go to the bank. And we would hawk it in the town square. There used to be trees before they tore down the park in the middle of town to make parking. That we would sit in, and many people in this area came and do all their shopping and pay off their bills, their credit bills. And we did really well, and my sister would go to the baseball games and sell them there. So it was a good business learning how to interface with adults of all walks of life. So that was good, and then I learned to do sales later, and I remember, because my dad sold things, he had all kinds of people, from the poorest to the wealthiest people in town shopping with him, so I wished I knew how to listen. Marla was buying a car, and she kept saying, all these guys just go into all this big spiel about all these things this car will do, and I could care less. She said, I wish they just listened to what I really am looking for when I'm buying something. And then they can tune in. And I thought, car salesmen don't really tune in, most of them, and really listen to you very much. And sometimes I wonder, maybe that's a second career, is to, maybe I could coach people in the art of listening in sales, because it really is important.
I think there's an other side to that coin for kids, is you try things out. I don't want to be doing that for the rest of my life. This just doesn't feel right to me. What else is there? Or from a parent, you have to go to school.
Yeah.
To stay
Yeah,
in school.
we're gonna say something.
My college roommate, was Dana, she was from Iowa. The summers, for a lot of those kids, was decastling corn.
Oh, yeah. Right.
That is not what you dream of doing in the future, but that's what was available in Swedesburg, Iowa.
But that could allow a lot of creativity. I mean, where else is your brain is pretty open to do, you're just tackling this routine thing, it leaves your brain pretty open to a lot of opportunity for creativity.
And she was very useful. She was 5'11", star center of the Iowa girls basketball team. But yeah,
Your sister?
no, my first year college roommate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That was Dana.
Oh, Lynn, yes, your hand
We're
up.
going to the other end of life. It's a lot different looking for purpose once you're retired. You have to be very intentional. It's not going to relate to your career. Of course, many of us were doing things even when we had a career that had more purpose too. But you're still, it's all based on other activities to give purpose to your life.
Right,
That also has that impact on other people. Like, for instance, we love to travel, but the only thing that does is help give us enjoyment, really. So there's a need to find other things, and not always easy.
That's a really
The
good
things that
point.
you can still do that will give you purpose, but also impact others' lives.
That's a good reminder. This country, at least, it defines a lot of people. Your job,
Mhm.
and once you're retired, okay, who am I now?
Exactly.
When you meet somebody for the first time, other than asking their name, what's the next question? It's always,
Right,
What do you do?
What you do?
it's gonna define us.
I got
And so, besides the vocations, we can talk about our avocations.
I was gonna say that because she does talk about how you need to live with purpose for both of those, both your
Everything you
vocation
do.
as well as your avocation.
It's your path, it's how day to day you relate to everybody you meet.
Yeah, there are a lot, I think people who, farmers who grow tobacco, I think, gosh, I couldn't be my call. I mean, I'm dedicated to sell it, but I understand it's a way of life for people. I don't want to mean that.
Well, with
My
a certain
goodness.
type of land they had in Appalachia, it was the only way they could survive,
Right.
to grow tobacco.
The only way to
If
make
you didn't grow tobacco, you died. I mean,
the land wasn't
you
good
couldn't
to
earn a
use,
living.
you can't grow corn on this soil
No,
or.
you can't.
But I think play the fiddle,
Use.
you can play the fiddle and
Well, right.
tell stories in Appalachia.
Well, right, but
That's another
Well, right, but
way of
you gotta look at the landscape of people who own small parcels of land. Right. So.
But I think the word intention that you used is extremely important for all of it. Because if I'm living intentionally, then who I am makes me see things that give me joy. I seek it out knowingly or unknowingly. And I think that happens when you lead an intentional life and not just kind of bouncing off the walls and.
Well,
think it's a-
but bouncing off the walls may be intentional. When when you suddenly have time from when you retire and you don't know what you're going to do, You may bounce off the walls for a while, finding things that bring you joy and passion, and then you can zero in on them a little. Good morning, Betty.
Hi, Betty.
Good morning, Betty.
But don't.
Oh, you're on mute.
Yes,
You're on mute.
please speak up.
Yeah.
If you'd like. But yeah, it says you're on mute.
All right. No, my battery was dead, so they came and charged it, but it's too late for, I'll be in time for church and not in time for the class.
Don't forget, Linda, when you're traveling, you're an emissary for the United States as opposed to the ugly American. Plus, you bring back all your experiences and are able to share them with other people, which are very unique experiences, I'm sure. So there's a lot of benefits that you're doing.
That's a good way.
Good point.
Yes,
Plus, you're providing income for them.
Right.
That's true. Although it's a
Yep.
good job.
Morning, Andy. We saw you.
Hey, Andy.
Funny.
Welcome.
But isn't that a decision rubric, when you're in the later stages of life to, if you're looking at something and they're relatively equal, you choose the one that's gonna make you the most happy, because you'll be the most pleasant to work with and probably the most successful doing that,
Right.
if it brings you joy, I think. So that was another thing I picked up from the, use that as a decision metric. Which of these two things is gonna give you the most joy? And do that.
If you wanna think about it, you can remind yourself to be grateful.
Yeah.
I've got a choice.
Yeah.
What am I gonna do with it?
And that's very intentional.
Of course.
I was listening to a podcast by, is it Mary Ann, I can't think of the last name, she wrote Gilead.
Oh,
Marilyn Robbins.
oh,
Marilyn.
So Mary,
She has a new book, it comes out on the 15th, which I pre-ordered, it's called Reading Genesis. And
Oh, that's a good-
I changed my sermon up a bit today to fit in something I heard in the podcast with Ezra Klein with the New York Times. And it's an exceptionally interesting, in fact, I know we don't do just vocal things here where we usually want video, but if you're willing just to listen to parts of that, it's really a fascinating read, but podcast. But she talks about the fact that from her Protestant perspective, from John Calvin, that any interaction we have with someone, the question is, what do I need from this? The question for a Christian is, what is God's purpose in me in talking to this person right now? What is my role in relationship to this person? And I thought, well, that's a bit heavy and serious all the time, but I still think there's some truth to that. And I don't know how the context, the whole conversation, how that came up, but I've listened to it twice. It's such a good podcast. I recommend it. But I do think what she said is true. Just the interactions we have can be filled with meaning, and you never know which one is going to make a difference for someone.
I have an illustration for that, but first of all, I'm so impressed with the conversation brought me back to what I have learned. It's that I have a role to play. I am divorced and I am way away from this family as it grows and expands and succeeds. And I look at them and I wonder, wow, if I were part of that family again, this is so exciting. Well, now I'm faced with the present where my used to be daughter-in-law, now ex-daughter-in-law, is running her own restaurant back in Guatemala. She just had to go back home because they were divorced. So I played this role you're talking about. Well, I've been through that. I know what it's about. I'm going to help her out. So I had this, thank you, ma'am, kind of attitude, and I'd call her once every 6 months. Of course, WhatsApp would never get through, and I had all these calls. Well, I thought, well, that really made an effort. And there's this list of all these attempts when she never got the call. So I would go through my granddaughter. And the end of the story is once a week or so ago, the WhatsApp worked. And she answered me right away in the text. And so I answered her back. And so in the last 2 weeks, I've been going like this all the time. It's not that I can hit her once every 6 months. to play my role. I'm playing this role and it's just like, now it really matters. Yeah,
That's great.
Significant.
yeah.
I think what was great about that book is she's basically she's saying, you're free, you are really called to be who you are, need who you are, and what gives you joy and intention. And that's a freeing. And John and I went to a funeral yesterday, and it was in a Baptist church. And the preacher spent much of the time preaching what he was saying, instead of acknowledging this relative who had died. And he talked about sin, and he focused so much on sin, and that we have to be forgiven for our sins, and we have to watch. And he even talked about sin that we don't even know we're doing. And I thought, in relation to this book, how is it that so many people who are under the influence of this thinking are focusing only on themselves, like Rosa, how much they're sinning, rather than really reaching out and thinking about what they can be giving of themselves and feeling themselves are really good and worthwhile to give to the world.
It can be very guilt, and sin can be a very self-absorbing. It is all about me, and I'm scared too. And if I'm doing it out of fear, because I've got to avoid hell, how much more absorbed am I gonna be? And trying to make sure I don't fall in that pit.
I was at this funeral with Carol and we both agreed on exactly what was happening. And, but I didn't have a chance to talk to the preacher afterwards because he talked about God. And every time he said God, and then after that it was him and he. Is God a man and not a woman? You know, so we walked out before
Mentally, we're gone.
Quickly labeled it.
Maybe just as well.
But the sad thing about it is the man that we were memorializing was a man who had given his life to he was a park ranger and lived they lived in several places, but the last place they lived was in Yellowstone. And he was just, if you knew him, he was just imbued with this grace about him. And I think a lot of it came from his, caring for the earth, being in the earth, being outside all the time. And he was raised on a farm and loved that farm and so on and so forth. And I thought that is the thing to celebrate in this human being who lived on this earth. He was living his passion.
And his minister was concerned about what he was interested in and not the person who divorced him,
right.
unfortunately.
Bad listener.
But it made me feel really thankful for our church.
Yeah, amen.
We're giving this, we're encouraged to really explore all these options rather than forcing us to think about really confined to thinking about ourselves and how we might be sinning.
Was that pastor condemning this man to hell?
Pardon?
Was that pastor condemning this man to hell?
No.
With all the talk of
Nothing
sin?
at all about, when he gave his sermon, there was nothing at all about the guys whose body was.
Nothing about the God, about the deceased.
But he did talk about God being in nature, but then he focused it more on, this really bothered me a lot. He focused on the fact that, it was not in nature that we find God. It was in the written word as it was. That is it, written. And he gave all these quotes of these things. This is the only way we can know God. And it was the exact opposite of what I thought Joe knew and experienced about God.
Well, Calvin would go, whoa, wait a second, that's not true. John Calvin would say, that's not true. Everyone can find something of God in the creation. And Calvin would strongly object to that. use of scripture. Even though he would say sola scriptura, like most Protestants, his primary is scripture. He would say, no, it's not that way at all. Something of the image of God is in all of us that we can still connect. And so,
But when you talk about how glad you are to be in this church, this is my 4th day in a row spending a lot of time in this church. Thursday night, I picked up John on time.
Yes.
And
I was on time too.
well, that's up to discussion. So, and we went to choir. And I love being with this group of people because they love music. I'm learning how to sing better and learning how to read music better. And it's a very joyous experience, very well knit together and always looking forward. And we're going to be singing in a synagogue in another month. And we're singing for Palm Sunday and Easter. And then Friday night, I was here for First Friday, which is really the second Friday this month. But, you know, we are a very mobile group and both Kai and Connie were here. And it was just, we had a lovely time, a lovely discussion. And we always have some new people. And as you know, we never plan exactly who's going to bring what. And it always works out perfectly. You know, just a very joyous event and people really bring on to it. And then yesterday I was here for the League of Women Voters who were hosting the author of Undaunted, a history of women in journalism and what they have done for humanity and shining light on so many different issues. And while that was going on downstairs, there was a retreat for the people from who are supporting the Green Bay Trail, and which was very interesting. Steve Hewells was involved with that. So there's a bunch of people down there meeting, and we were up here with about 50
And
women.
there was also people playing pickleball.
Yes, and we were here with 50 women, hosting this podcast from Mount Vernon, with the author of Undaunted, this history of women in journalism. And we also had Heidi Stevens here, who's in communications, and the president of the League of Women Voters of Illinois. And then today I'm here for this lovely meeting, the spiritual enrichment meeting, and for church, and then for the green team later on. And I thought, my goodness, this church is enveloping everybody and talking about all sorts of topics, and it's a thrilling place to be. I'm very grateful.
I thought about the same thing yesterday, walking in here. It was alive on a Saturday. It was so much fun to see in various corners of the church, different things. The building being used in such fun ways.
yeah, I'm glad,
Constructive ways.
I'm glad that whole, the gym, I like to call it. It's not really used as much as when I was here before, because it was still relatively new then. But I'm glad to see at least we have pickleball going in here, but I'm sure there's other things that we could use that for. That's it.
There was, Drew Davis, I think it
Yeah,
was,
Drew.
came with his son just to have, on a rainy day, to have space in the gym. And that, I think that's a great
Oh,
use
that's
for the
great.
gym,
Yeah,
getting more
absolutely.
people with young kids just to come over here and let them run.
All right, you get great basketball.
But we've had major dinners and parties down there.
Yeah,
Marvelous
we
parties.
have had a.
I remember one time we packed something like, I don't know, 3,000 or 4,000 meals for people,
Remember that.
to send around the world. And children use it. We do use the gym, and we thought that we use it more. Oh, rummage too.
Of course.
How can we forget that?
Oh, yeah. How fortunate are we? Because we get to be reminded all the time of the power of connecting with people in our vocations, our avocations, our volunteerism, whatever you do. I like that she reminds me, we all should be cognizant of that and feel it. What we do, whether it's your job or anything else, you know, you're connecting with others. And some examples of people who probably might feel lonely or not even think this way. She mentions a writer sitting at her desk at her computer for hours, all alone, just writing and writing and writing. Those words are going to be read by people she'll never meet.
Right.
A night watchman sitting there all night is there so other people are able to sleep at night. A custodian at a grammar school is there working all by himself so the kids have a place to go to school. So we're all connected.
And Manuel here, and then our Manuel.
Exactly. Yes, he helps everybody, helping
Yeah,
remembers how much
he sent all this up for us today.
Exactly. Yes, he makes everything easy.
Even, I thought,
Yeah.
seeing her talking about cleaning, you know, even cleaning in her house, you know, cleaning off like, what was it, the baseboards, you know, and there was, that was, and I think that's satisfying sometimes too, when we're overwhelmed with everything else, to just do a simple task like that,
Yeah.
it's really.
I cleaned the refrigerator, I took everything out, cleaned it yesterday. I mean, it's like, I kind of enjoyed doing it because it had a bad smell for one.
Did you find out how?
Either the blue cheese or the fish.
Maybe the combination.
Yeah, that's famous.
It only takes one dying piece of a fruit or a vegetable.
Oh.
I have to remember,
Right.
you brought up a memory, when I was in grad school in New York, we had for a very short time, a roommate, there were three of us in this, sharing this apartment. And, have you ever drunk oyster milk?
No.
She had purchased oysters and left them open.
Oh, dear.
And every element of food for the other two of us. And I was eating on $10 a week in grad school in the sixties. But it's possible if supper was butcher meat or familia cereal. And I'll never forget, taste, and of course we threw it all out. Taste the oyster milk. So, clean your refrigerator. Yeah, things can get away from you, and being retired, as it were, in a retirement home, the very word retirement sort of puts a cap on activity, which is just the opposite. But you have to pick yourself up by your own bootstraps, because it's so comfortable just to sit back, turn on the TV, or pick up a good book, both of which I love to do. And it is a daily get up out of yourself every morning to avoid that. And that is a challenge. It really is. Because it's so comfortable to do. I love comfort, but you know, and especially if you're in pain, it almost gives you an excuse. But of course, if you don't deal with it, it'll get worse.
But if you're in pain, the best thing you can do is put your mind on joy,
Well,
finding
give it
joy.
a good try, yeah.
No, I think
Sitting is perfectly fine. I stand up and something is hurting. And the doctor last week found out it wasn't my hips. It's just the old scoliosis, family inheritance.
Yeah.
There you are. Tough rocks.
One of the last jobs that I had, I was a co-director for restorative justice programs in Barron County in northern Wisconsin. And my best memory of that is 4 kids, as a senior prank, had gone to a local turkey farm, brought the turkeys back and let them loose in the high school. Shoved them into lockers, it was, put them up in the ceiling tiles. And the town was absolutely,
Who did this?
high school seniors as a senior prank. And the town just exploded with anger. The teachers, the school board, obviously, the people who had done fundraising for additional buildings, the community at large. I mean, it was unbelievable. So you have to have, with restorative justice, bring those people together. So there are representatives of the school board, the community, the kids themselves, their parents. It was a big meeting. And you have a pre-meeting with the offenders to find out whether or not they're appropriate and would have a good apology for the group. So we went through all those steps and we got down to it. And a couple of the kids, you know, was like, yeah, I'm sorry, it was dumb and stupid and we shouldn't have done it.
How did they really feel?
Well, 3 of them are, you know, they didn't take it very seriously. But there was one kid that was going like this and I had to keep my eye on him the whole time. I thought he was gonna have a stroke. His face was red. And the most angry was the janitor who had to clean it up.
Right.
He was ready to,
Resign.
no, put him in jail or
Yeah.
just,
Oh,
you know, throw the book at him.
Oh,
So he came around and he gave his side of the story of the turkeys and how horrible it was and how it affected him. Then he got around to this kid. And he said, talked about how very sorry he was, and he truly took responsibility for what he had done. And so then you go around for a final go, if anybody has anything else to say. And the kid said, I can't walk down the street. I can't make eye contact. I am so ashamed of what I did. So when they went around the second time, the janitor looked at him and said, you can hold your head up. I forgive you.
Whoa,
Your apology is accepted.
talk about restorative justice.
Really, that was,
Whoa.
that's probably one of the best things I've ever encountered. It was amazing,
Oh.
just amazing.
Did that change
So
your
the kid
attitude at
offered
home and the
help
rest
too?
of the community?
Absolutely. They heard him.
The other
Saw
kids,
that.
the other three.
Well, yeah, they're, you know, I'm not sure whatever happened to them, but this kid continued to succeed and went on to school.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, it was, but that was one of those intentional things, that's one of those connecting things. It just all came together, it was unbelievable.
But someone in his early life had taught him sensitivity to other human beings.
Mhm.
And if you don't have, but you cannot be sensitive to other human beings, to other people, to any situation, unless you've had an enormous amount of love and attention yourself.
Mhm.
And teachers used to say in Chicago public school system, the apple that never falls very far from the tree, and also those who hurt others have been hurt themselves. And that is the most important thing I think that we can do going forward in life, is giving tremendous amounts of love and attention to children. Because that is the beginning of the trajectory of their lives, and I see it all the time.
how long ago did this happen?
Oh, it's been a while.
Where
20
was this in northern Wisconsin?
Rice Lake, Wisconsin.
Oh, Rice Lake.
Mhm. Wow, yeah, it was amazing.
My son in the, senior prank, he wrote a letter, signed the dean of, boys, whatever that title is, saying, this was at the time of the AIDS was coming up, and he said that due to the AIDS and, environment, the graduating class, the party, for the graduation party, we will provide condoms. And, blah, 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 signed the dean of. I got that letter and I said to my son, if you think you're old enough to have sex just because you have a condom in your mouth. And Ricky looked at me and he said, Mom, you fool.
Wow,
Yeah.
that was the senior prank, or his.
That was the senior prank.
Mhm.
I don't think it was certain parents that got this letter, the whole school did.
Let's see, how times have changed. Early eighties, nobody really knew what to make of it. They thought it could be something to joke about.
Which makes me think of Dr. Pear.
Dr. Pear, I was just
Yeah,
thinking.
who just passed away, who was a
Yeah,
member of our
that's right.
church. And he was, I think they had infectious diseases at Northwestern University, or
That's
the medical school, and he was the one that went around to all the school boards and said that their children would not be infected by having a student who did have AIDS, within their school. It's very, very beloved mass.
It's important to educate people.
And here from our church.
Mhm.
Or Princess Di did it, yeah.
You know, before we close the day, I'd like to congratulate whoever chose this book. Jane got a copy from the library, and I've been reading behind and ahead now. It's just a wonderful book. It's,
Yes.
It is a wonderful.
It was Alan's idea.
it's such a gift at coming up with these examples and,
A great storyteller, isn't she?
right, she's great.
And doesn't claim to know it all, but just some simple stories from my
Yeah.
life is what she's saying,
Yeah.
you know?
I like such a gift for her writing goes. It's just so,
Yeah,
it's
it's
so
easy to read
engaging
and-
and simple and easy to read. I mean,
But
I
deep.
really enjoyed it.
Simple indeed.
Yeah.
I'm not cynical.
Oh, no, right, absolutely.
Alan said that he's met her several times, or maybe, had a class. with her.
I think she was a teacher of his.
Yeah, she taught him.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think
he was in one of her religion classes?
Yes, was it?
Oh, wow.
She talks about sometimes she spent at Emory, maybe not teaching.
It was a writing class that he took from her.
No, that's right. Yeah, and we've got one of her previous books that we spoke about in this group years ago, only more briefly than this. It's over here in the bookshelf.
Is that the one leading church?
Holy Envy,
Oh.
what we can learn as Christians from other religions.
Oh, yeah.
I think we might have
Talk
that.
about connections, you know, how much we have in common.
What's our assignment for next week?
That's a good question.
I
I
don't know.
think, here's the thing, I can tell you it's one of two things. Either one more chapter from this book and we'll let you know as soon as we can, or Rabbi Bruce Elder. We've got him, he's been really, really nice to commit to come in twice. Coming up soon, if not the next 2 weeks, then the second and third week. But we're gonna get back into learning from Judaism. And, well, not in general, but because of these times, we're gonna talk Christians and Jews like Gaza.
About that.
Gaza, the war, and, you know, he's been here before.
You know, there's lots of Jewish groups. In fact, there was a huge article, a half page in Tribune yesterday about the Jewish groups who are really appalled at what is happening in Gaza and are for an immediate peace and two country solution. Two-state solution, right?
Yeah, so we'll get as political as we want with Rabbi Elder and fighting anti-Semitism as well as Islamophobia, I'm sure.
What synagogue is he from?
Hakafah,
It's
He's
so
here.
hard.
yeah, wonderful guy. And
And we don't conflict with his religious duties, since his religious duties are on Friday and Saturday.
exactly. Mhm.
Are we going to have any chance to hear the Palestinian side?
Well, that's not something we planned on our syllabus for this church year, because of course we booked as many sessions as we could since the end of last summer, all the way through the church year, well before October 7th.
Yeah.
And the attack and the atrocities.
Because I have known about what Palestinians went through since 1946,
Mhm.
when I met at Dartmouth College, a student whose family hotel had 8 minutes to get out when the Israelis arrived. So the Palestinians have been suffering since 1946.
Of course.
Before that.
Yeah, and at North Park, there were, well, here in our church a few years ago were young men who had themselves witnessed what it was like to have the Israelis come and tear down your house in Gaza. And one man saying, well, my mother is sick in there, and he complained about the soldiers coming, so they arrested him. And there was an eyewitness. So,
There was a big,
I am, curious about, I've been curious for years about what the Palestinians have been going.
It's gonna have a major effect, I think, on our coming election.
Of course it is.
It is already, and Carol, you
Oh,
know.
in Michigan, forget it.
Yeah, Detroit, vote, but Carol, you were looking something up?
pardon?
Did you just look something up you wanted to
Yeah.
share?
Yeah, if all that spells, Google it, right?
Yes.
Okay, March 17th, the practice of getting lost.
There we go. Our last chapter will be on the practice of getting
March.
lost.
March 24th, season 6 of the series, Rabbi Bruce Allen.
Thanks, Carolyn. That's somebody right here knows. That's awesome.
There was an advertisement from a group of Jewish leaders a couple of weeks ago from the New York Times. Really after Biden for, supporting Israel in this and really, really upset about the treatment of the Palestinians.
I believe the president hears,
One page
the
later.
president hears that, and I think Vice President Harris is doing a lot these days in speaking not just to college campuses and the younger voters, but the Palestinians.
Yeah.
I think she's been in Michigan quite a bit lately.
I'm trying to get Fox News to.
Yeah, good luck.
Well, we're continuing to send arms to them.
Isn't that funny? Selling arms to the Israeli government, but also setting up boats to bring aid to
Yeah.
the people that are killed and wounded.
Well, I think it's really hard to take sides in this particular situation.
Yeah, how about
It's extraordinarily difficult.
No one's, it's not, there's no right and wrong. Let's just assume no one's right and let's just settle it. If it's gotta be a two-state solution, well, we'll have a lot to talk about with Bruce.
With Ukraine in the middle of it and Trump saying, forget it. And hosting the Hungarian dictator at Mar-a-Lago as we speak.
Of course.
Right.
Putin's best friend in the United States.
Yeah, the Hungarian dictator is being hosted la-di-da in Florida as we speak. And being talked about.
I really do feel though that the Palestinians who are withholding their vote from Biden, though, when it comes down to push Trump, if their choice between Trump and Biden, that they would support Biden, because do remember that Trump tried to really prevent the many Middle Easterners from coming. here.
I think they
Yeah.
will too.
And yes, I do too, and plus he
That's
is,
a well-educated.
he is so
population.
divisive.
Very well.
And makes no
Also,
point of it.
I've been all this pro-Arab, Palestinian stance and, but I am reading this book, which is history in just World War I. And just before World War II, it went a whole chapter about the Jewish situation in Palestine. And I could see the Jewish side. I was right back with the Jews. Because it's a compelling story. That's of course been going on for hundreds of years.
But the only
You
reason,
can't just put them in Africa.
but wait a minute, the only reason we have Israel is because the Americans and not the Jewish people here. Nor did the Europeans.
It goes back to this book. I mean, the answer's here.